Previously on Anything Goes.
It's nothing I haven't written about in that column I write for the Village Post.
Right, okay.
I won't be, mean about the answer, but
Right.
it does, just the fact you ask the question answers the question.
Right.
I have a couple questions about ball to cock size ratio. So
No, I have some really good dumb questions.
If you ask me that question today, it's a very different answer I would have than 40 years ago.
Oh, I hope so.
Or even 20 years
Keeps
ago.
getting
Be weird if
better.
Or
you
even
were-
last week, come to think of it. Do you know I can't sit down in a car now without it hurting?
What?
I sit on my
Me
balls
either.
all the time.
Me either.
What the hell is that? Now, see, you don't have to worry about this, Christina.
No.
Yeah, or if you have a...
Yeah.
Do they have
There-
labia tucks where they put it...
The clit grows and you just...
Not the clit,
It never
the
sags.
actual...
It doesn't sag down there.
I've seen some...
I
Let's
like a
talk about this
clit.
later.
I like a clit with a good spit curl. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah, my
It's like a
lips
water
are
fountain?
have we become
small and
Howard
perky
Stern
like
in
my
like
boobs.
4
Exactly.
seconds?
Exactly.
What happened here?
I'll check my
They
bank
just
account.
got really
JFL.
filthy really fast.
And now, let's get to a new exciting show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready for some laughs? Are you?
Don't touch that dial. It was molested and it brings back horrible memories. This is Anything Goes with Darren Frost,
How the fuck am I funny?
Dave Martin,
What have we got here? A fucking comedian.
and Kathleen McGee.
And I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you!
Can you dig it? Okay, here's me saying something.
I still feel like we're getting some weird feedback. You guys
We
hear
are.
We are?
Yep.
it? Like
Some kind of tinny
1, 2,
noise.
3. I don't. Is it coming on my end?
Well, I can hear it when you speak as well.
Okay. Anyways. All right.
All right, are you recording?
Yeah. I'm getting. Someone bought me a selfie light. You know those circular selfie lights?
Oh,
That's what I have. That's why
Yeah.
I'm...
I'm gonna look as pretty as you, Kathleen. Can you believe that?
Well, why don't you have it up yet?
I don't. Well, it hasn't arrived yet.
Oh, you ordered it. Okay, good.
It's coming. It's on its way. It's on its way.
Right now, Dave, you look like every asshole in an '80s movie, right? With the hair and almost like that Christian Slater kind of "I'm a fucking asshole." The green
Like
jacket,
I'll pump up the volume.
kind of pump up the volume, yeah.
Yeah, very sort of like. Well, hey there, everybody. Ever hate it when your parents tell you what to do and you don't pay any rent, but you still act like a piece of shit because you haven't had any life experiences? Yeah, cool. Aren't we great? Yeah.
I just gotta go put the red version of this jacket I'm wearing on.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Oh man.
How's everybody's week?
It was fine. It was like 18 degrees in Edmonton yesterday.
Hmm.
It was nice.
Well, that's fair. Sean Connery dies, and you gotta be able to go outside and celebrate.
Yeah, I went to, when he died, I was like, so I'm going to find out, like, what shit he's done. Because as soon as somebody dies these days, they're really like, don't celebrate too soon because they've done this.
Right.
And that's when I saw the video where he's basically telling Barbara Walters that sometimes you should hit a woman.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I
that's the
believe that.
famous-
Wow.
Can I say in Sean Connery's defense, I believe he said that you could slap anyone if they're hysterical and they're not of just reacting well in the situation. Just to, like Cher slapped Nicolas Cage in Moonstruck, when she's like, bam, snap out of it. I think he was. I think he was just saying everyone, but that of course includes women. So.
But it doesn't come across as like
I
nice.
agree with Sean Connery.
Yeah, okay, we know that.
That's better. Now we know where it's going. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up that vibe, Dave. I said, when I watched it the first time, like, 10, 15 years ago, I was like, he's saying he slapped women.
Yeah. When they get too out of control.
When they get too out of control for Sean Connery, a little smack and,
I just watched Gerald's Game before this. It's on Netflix.
Oh, I do want to watch that.
It's good. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a couple and they're trying to spice up the relationship. So she gets handcuffed to this bed and then he has a heart attack and dies. Like, that's not a spoiler. That's in all of the.
That's in the trailer.
It's in the trailer, but it is good. It is really good. The ending is okay because Stephen King endings are always kind of blah, but it was good.
I do enjoy. Those are some of my favorite sort of horror suspense sort of movies where you're trapped in a situation and you have to play that whole "how would I get out of this situation" game. Like there's that one that I'm gonna watch that movie that Kathleen talked about. But there's another one called Frost, I think, or Frostbite, or Frostburn, or Frozen. Not Frozen the cartoon, but the one where the 3 people get caught on that ski chair lift.
Oh yeah, that's a good movie too.
It's like one of those movies. I'm sort of like, honestly, what would I do in that situation to get the fuck out of there? Because it's sort of like they really kind of go through there's 3 of them. So, and of course, yeah, it's just crazy. And also that movie, No Vacancy. Did you see that one?
No.
That's the one where it's Luke Wilson and Kate someone. I'm not sure. I don't know. But she's really great. And so they get lost off the highway. And so they pull into this deserted motel that used to be a real hot spot, but then they built the interstate and nobody goes there anymore. So they go into this hotel, they check in, everything, it does seem kind of weird. And so they go into their room, and then there's this stack of VHS tapes. And so Luke Wilson puts one in the machine, and then he realizes that everything that's on those videotapes was recorded in the room that they're in.
Oh, okay.
And they're all snuff films.
Wow.
So, and then so he's like, holy shit, look, what's going on here? And then they start hearing a bang at the door, knock here, knock there, all this craziness ensues. But it is one of those movies where you're just like, what the fuck? What would I do?
I know, when I was watching A Return of the Jedi, and when Princess Leia was chained to Jabba the Hutt, I was like, fuck, what would I do?
Well, are you Princess Leia or Jabba the Hutt?
I'm Princess Leia, Dave.
Okay, all right.
In his golden bikini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look, you kind of look like Princess Leia right now with your little...
Or that guy from the...
Or if I pan down, it's Jabba the Hutt with Princess Leia. Are you happy now, Dave?
No, I'm just saying. You just said if I was in...
Fatty.
Wait, no. I was just saying, if I was Jabba the Hutt in that situation, I don't know, I'd yank on that
slap her around. Am I right, Dave? You'd probably slap her around. That's my Sean Connery impression. I know Dave does it. That's why I like to do it. Just slap her around. Isn't that?
Well, of course, I haven't gotten the chance to do my fantastic impression yet.
There we go. Yeah.
You two yapping away like you're doing.
Okay.
But yeah, I do want to see that movie.
I haven't watched a horror movie in a long time, but there's Fiona O'Brien had a great tweet, or at least I think it was tweet. It was definitely Facebook. How she said that her son had watched Blair Witch Project a couple days ago, and he still hasn't left her bed. Like he's so scared to sleep alone because of that movie. And I forget how scary that movie was for a certain age. I was older, so it didn't scare me, but it really fucked up some people's heads.
And people puked.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it changed movie making so much, and so many. It was like the first really big sort of found footage movie.
Yes.
Even though, I mean, in many ways, Texas Chainsaw Massacre it's not a found footage movie, but it's so low budget that that's one of the scarier things about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember studying it in marketing when I took marketing, and because it's one of the best marketed films, because for a long time people thought it was a documentary.
Right.
Like they made it sound like for the first few weeks, first week, but then people saw it and were, it started around as a movie. But it was just so well done, and it was like so like the acting was so good, and that movie was so good.
Yeah, it was weird because it's like they just had like a little blip at the beginning of Blair Witch Project that said this is a work of fiction or something like that, or it's not a documentary. But then it went quickly into the documentary style, and yeah, it was really taken.
But the way they marketed it, they made it sound like it was like a real documentary, but it was just sort of like because it was a fake documentary. Yeah,
it's still probably. I'm not sure if that or Paranormal Activity 1, but I still believe it's the highest grossing movie of all time per dollar spent making the film. Obviously, the Avengers is, the biggest because it's $2 billion.
Yeah.
But for the amount that it costs to make it, for pulled in a percentage, I think it's almost still number one.
I don't know. I think Paranormal Activity might have broken that record.
Right.
There's like a movie. There's a series on AMC right now called Eli Roth's History of Horror.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then they go through every genre. If I could recommend to anyone, it's a great look at some classic movies. But you also forget the levels that some horror movie directors try to put into their movies that you're not even aware of. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They talk about how at the beginning there's a hitchhiker they pick up. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about the town that they're in and the state that they're in and how they've shut down all the factories and there isn't food enough to eat. And then there's a whole cannibalism sort of underlying subplot to Texas Chainsaw that you don't really even take in. One thing, both of you have seen Fubar?
Yes. Yeah, I have it on DVD. Yep.
Yeah. So I know a friend of mine who went to go and see Fubar, but he missed like the first minute or so.
Right.
Where it says it's a documentary. So the part in Fubar where the documentary filmmaker jumps off that cliff and breaks his neck, he watched it and was just like, "Holy shit! What the fuck is?" He thought he thought that it was like a real documentary till the very end or till the next day, and then he was surprised when someone told him it wasn't. But
talking about like even for docs for horror movies, there's a 5-hour documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
It's 5 hours. They go through all the movies. They talk to all the important people. Like, I forgot that like the second movie is severely gay and there's this huge gay undertone to it. And it's pretty groundbreaking for the time. People didn't pick up on it, and so they go through all that, and it's a pretty amazing thing. It's there's like 7 movies now. I never watched past number 3, I think, but it's still interesting to watch. There's I suppose like an 8-hour version for Friday the 13th, where they do the same thing, like a deep dive on all the people associated. So yeah, I'll check that Eli Roth thing out. That'd be up my alley.
I really miss seeing horror movies in full theaters. Like I miss seeing most movies. Like I miss seeing comedies and horrors in full theaters because there's nothing better than screaming with a bunch of people. But I don't think that's ever coming back. I don't think that stuff's coming back ever.
When I got the chance to go and see Get Out, I went on a Tuesday, and it was at the Kathleen. Do you remember the Rainbow Theater at Market Square?
Yeah, well, that's where you used to always take me on dates because it was the cheapest place you could go.
Yeah, it was easy to sneak food in.
Yeah.
Easy to sneak food in, yeah.
Yeah.
You hear people opening burritos.
Yeah. Someone ordered fajitas. Yeah. But I went there with my girlfriend at the time. We went to go and see Get Out there. It was on a Tuesday. And if that theater holds like 100 people, we were probably like 2 of like 6 white people in the theater.
Right.
And not to be like all cliche or anything like that, but it was fun to watch that movie in that theater with that audience. It was like people yelling at the screen, being like, "Don't do that, don't go in there." Oh, he's gonna fuck you up.
Wait a second though. So what you're saying is that you bring other women to our special theater?
Well,
don't.
I remember
the World's Theater. I know. I didn't take Darren there either. So
people always say, when it's speaking about stand-up comedy or comedy, what's the best comedy show you ever seen, or comedy gets the best reaction or whatever. And I always tell everyone the best reaction I ever saw, still to this day, was I was an usher at a movie theater when The Naked Gun first came out. And it was 400 people, sold out in a 400-seat venue. And I have never seen people laugh like that for 90 minutes. It was I saw people throw up from laughing so hard.
Oh my God. I miss that. I don't miss the throwing up, but I remember seeing American Pie in the theaters and people losing their minds. I remember seeing Dumb and Dumber. I remember seeing Wayne's World in the theaters and people lost their shit. It was so good.
I got to see. There used to be the Uptown Theater in Toronto.
Yes,
and it was at one point it was it was just one big theater, but they divided it into 3 separate theaters, And I remember it was like an afternoon. It was the day it came out. It was like the 4 o'clock show, but it was like one of the early shows, matinee. And my friend from art college went with me and to see Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were like, okay, so at the time, I guess I would have been like 22, 23, or maybe 24. I don't know. But we were the oldest people in the theater.
Right.
Like we were in our early 20s and we were the oldest. So it's like literally the demographic of the theater was like 15-year-old boys to like 26-year-old boys or something like that. And people were going fucking apeshit for it. And it was amazing.
Well, I went and saw South Park with like 9 comics.
Oh yeah.
Same thing.
Afternoon. I think you might have been there, Dave, for it. Were you there with us?
Might have been, yeah.
Like 9 or 10 comics, and we went, and it wasn't packed, but it had a good number of people in the theater. I have not laughed like that. That's the last movie I remember, comedy-wise, laughing like that was South Park, and that's what, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
They need to like make theaters like nostalgic again once this pandemic is over, because it seriously is like so much fun being in a room laughing with so many people. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. We'll not even get into comedy or anything like that. I got to say one more thing about the Blair Witch Project. You know, we all remember the end of the movie.
Yep.
Right, where she's going through the house, and then she sees her friend up against the wall.
Yes.
And then the movie cuts out.
Yes.
I remember talking to, and you know, we all have an idea of what happened. The kid got possessed or some shit like that. But I remember talking to a friend of mine, and when he saw the movie, at the end, when he saw the guy standing up against the wall, he thought the guy was taking a piss. And then the movie just stopped, and it was just like, wow. It doesn't seem that scary if you just thought he was taking a piss and your camera runs out of film. But
have I told what I thought happened in The Sixth Sense?
No, but we do have a guest coming in. So
is she here now?
Yeah, she's here now.
Okay, then we'll tell after.
Hey, it's Big Daddy Tazz. You're listening to Anything Goes on Sirius XM. I was going to say FM, but they hit me last time, so that's it. I'm
XM
radio. What else am I supposed to say? Am I getting paid for this? Well, screw it.
You have a bottle of water.
Yeah.
For a second. So, Kathleen, this is Chelsea.
Hello.
Chelsea's in St. John's, Newfoundland, right?
Nice to meet you, yeah.
You're still there? I wasn't sure if you're somewhere else. You are in Newfoundland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And Dave is there. Dave and Kathleen are both comedians. We've been friends for many years. And I met you in Newfoundland because myself and Kenny Robinson went there to do a show. And we actually did a show in your place of employment.
That church?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the coolest strip club
I've ever found.
It's the best.
Club, yeah. So, how long have you been at the Cotton Club in St. John's?
On and off for 6 years.
6 years, okay. And before you were there, was it always at the church?
My stripping?
No, like 6 years ago, was it at that church or was it at a different venue before when you started there?
It was there for quite a while before that and then at a different location. They built their reputation down on Water Street at a different and then you've been there, I think 10, 12 years ago maybe.
Right. But the whole time you've been there, it's an old church. For those who don't know, it's a strip club inside an old church.
Very cool.
That's
Which is ironic on so many levels.
Yes, on so many
I've
levels.
actually learned my lesson.
That's half the turn on.
About it.
What's that,
I
sorry?
tell customers about it and they freak out and they get up and run out, so I stopped telling people.
Oh, right, yeah. You can't say to someone, if you want to get a dance, get closer to God, and they just run out.
Wow.
Well, what I was doing without really any like premeditation, I was just being in the moment and being me because that's how I work. Like they would sit down and I'd start my pivot and I'd say like, I bet you didn't know we're in the confessional booth, right? Thinking that they'd be like, woohoo, naughty. And they like literally got up and booked it a couple of times. I was like, ooh, okay, maybe I should slow down with that.
Right. You wonder what his confessions are, that he was sort of like, holy shit.
Right.
That's so funny.
I got some secrets that I can't even pretend like yeah.
I was so shocked. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm desensitized. I don't know.
I was telling them beforehand that you also had some time dancing in Niagara Falls, and for those people who don't know, I don't know what era you did that in, but when I was going to university in that area, so this was like the late '80s, early '90s, and to mid '90s. Niagara Falls was like kind of almost like the strip club capital of the North, really.
It was amazing. I wasn't there in the early 90s. I got there in like late 90s.
Right.
But it was like we would go to like a nightclub in New York or Chicago and say like, you know, I work at the Sundowner, and we'd be going in the back door on the red carpet type of shit.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
so different than how it is now.
Can I say this? I remember the ads for the Sundowner in Buffalo 29. In Toronto, we would get Buffalo 29 stations, and then they would have they had ads for the Sundowner, that club, which I'm surprised they never tried to have any crossover with Gordon Lightfoot. You just think his song Sundown is right there.
Yeah.
Sundowner. Oh, and always, I remember the Sundowner's the first place that I was too young to go to a strip club when I first saw the commercials, but they always bragged they had a shower unit at the Sundowner. And come down here and see our shower unit.
They have a shower.
Maybe they don't now.
But they must have figured it out. They have a shower at the Cotton Club. It's like world famous.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, they have one in Niagara Falls at the Sundowner, apparently.
I experienced the locker room change room, which is a lot of fun in Niagara Falls, but there wasn't one for the customers by the time I arrived.
Yeah.
Niagara Falls is where I saw a stripper squat over a man's face and pick money out of his mouth with her vagina.
Yeah. I've seen that in Niagara Falls as well, and it's pretty crazy.
It is, especially because they all act so baffled by the fact that they have vagina problems at the end of the night with one another.
Right.
Well, paper cuts might be an issue, but
yeah.
I don't know why that would be a turn on to me. That would almost be, I mean, the metaphor for the balance of power at a strip club between men and women would be too much of a metaphor for me right there, with a woman literally taking money out of my mouth with her vagina. That would be like, whoa, okay, this is
well, like, you know, mix some Red Bull and cocaine perhaps with it. Like the chances of you getting a really broken nose are like really high, right? Like, I mean, how graceful is she really being in the squat when she slaps down on your face, right?
Yeah.
I'm more worried about up here, my mental trauma. Be like,
oh wow, I think it's a painful experience.
Yeah.
I just, you know what? Maybe I mean, I like to think I might be dirty, but I don't want to put money in my mouth.
You know what? I always teach customers that, and they're so confused, and I kind of feel guilty of like ruining the moment, but I'm always like, I just take it out of their mouth. I go, no, don't eat it, and then I just proceed as if it was in their mouth.
Yeah, like
I bet if when Bill Gates gets his ways, we'll all have a computer chip up here, and you can literally just take your debit card and then just slide it across the vagina, and then bing, 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 a cash amount will pop into her account already.
Well, you know what, Dave? I don't mean to brag, but on a show called Gutterball Alley, I actually wrote a sketch, and it was Hair Miles, a strip club reward card for dances, and at the end of the dance, the girl stood up and swiped the card with her vagina.
Yes, but that's what the future holds.
Yes.
Now, I think I've been to that. We've been to that club before, haven't we, Darren?
Yes.
Not to do a show, but just to be there. Yeah.
Yes. Because in St. John's, there's not that many places to go late at night unless you really want to get hammered and go down to George Street or something like that. So a lot of times we'd end up there or a few other small places around. It really is one of the best strip clubs in Canada for sure.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I went there with some comics, and one of them came from their private dance, and I was like, "You look like you had a lot of fun." He's like, "Yeah, it was good," and I was like, "No, you look like you're glowing," and he's like, "No, it was fun," and then he just had bronzer all over his face from where he had motor. It was the best. Oh.
I think there was one comic that did a show once, probably in Niagara Falls as well, and he might have been hosting the show. I'm not going to say who it was, but he's been on this podcast.
Okay.
And I think he got on stage, and then the next act that came on after him said, I think our friend was over the strip club. He visibly had glitter on his face.
Right.
So yeah, it was quite dazzling.
I love it. Have you ever stripped in Alberta? I'm in Alberta.
I haven't. Wah, wah, wah. I have a story behind why.
Okay.
Some strippers hate Alberta because of the Looney and Toonie game.
I think it's a big, huge conspiracy. And when I tell people about it, I compare it to the Biggie and Tupac conspiracy that the news created. And I compare the agencies who I believe started the whole thing to the news with Biggie and Tupac. I don't know if that makes any sense for other people, but that's how it feels to me. I've been waiting for like 25 years for evolution, and it has not happened.
Is there a crazy agency war?
Yeah, well, they basically condition the girls out there to believe that the east side of the country girls are unsafe and, whore capital. A lot of like slut shaming and all that. And then like we consider that, and I don't want to say we, like I do, but generally the girls on the country consider them like the brainwashed show ponies.
Right.
And because of that, we don't join forces and do wonderful things like unions.
Right. Who knew there was stripper wars? That's the kind of wars we need on TLC.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more that could be done about this industry than people have done yet. That's for sure.
Well, there was a dancer once in Montreal that tried to convince me to kill her husband, but I had 2 shows on Saturday, so I couldn't do it. So hopefully, I don't know if anyone else stepped in or not, but I know that, I mean, that's just Montreal, and that's just one person, so I don't want to go, it's not everybody, I know. Like, but what about the West Coast? Because I heard that Vancouver had quite a crazy scene for a while as well.
Yeah, I just refuse to work anywhere that requires a third-party company to get naked. Like, to me, it's just like low-key pimping, right?
Right. So,
but number 5 Orange is a really fun place to go.
I tried to work there, and they wouldn't hire me.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's crazy.
I'm glad I went through my 30s and not in my 20s, because in my 20s I would have been like, oh, I'm not skinny enough, I need bigger boobs. But because I'm smart enough now, when I did go, I was like, oh, they want me to comply and submit. No, I'm not into the repression later. And I left. Yeah. But I've been hearing about it for many, many years, and I was really excited. So what I did was I left and went to the fire hall across the street and swung out the pole and partied with the firemen all day and made fun of the club with them. So it's the time.
Why isn't there a strip club that's basically a fire station?
I know, right?
Like, it's got a pole already. It's got ladders. They can have men.
I mean, the Codified nailed it with the church. There should definitely be like some, Never Never Land looking treehouse strip clubs and all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah, but
maybe I should just start my own strip clubs, and they'll be themed strip clubs. They'll be the Disneylands of strip clubs.
Yeah, but
imagine women finally open strip clubs.
I think that are there a lot of female-owned strip clubs, or is that like almost non-existent?
Almost non-existent.
Yeah.
But okay, can I just say, imagine being in the neighborhood where the local fire department became a strip club, and then your house happens to catch on fire, and then everyone's like, "Shouldn't the firemen be here by now?" Yeah, we turned it into a strip club. We had a really good run with no fires, and well, you're gonna lose your house. But here's some lap dance tickets for you. I don't know. Have you performed in Toronto before?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now I've just always been curious. Now I don't know how it works, but I heard that it was just that like you have to sort of pay to play, sort of like a comedy show, but it's a bringer show, and you have to bring the audience, but you have to pay to get up on stage, and then that's the advertisement for you to get dances backstage.
That's this whole side of the country. So you've got, I don't really know where it starts, Winnipeg, I think. So from Winnipeg west, majority, 90% of the strip club is them paying you and you being told what to do through an agency, this kind of stuff. And then everywhere on the east side from there is contracting, renting the space. You go on stage to advertise, you're down a couple bucks and off you go for your dances.
Right, okay. So yeah, so then your 3 songs is sort of your promotional chance to be like, hey, do you want to go off and have a private dance with me? So you have to, so do you pay or go on stage for free in Ontario?
I come in Ontario, Newfoundland, Quebec, like all over this side. I come in and I rent the space with my cash up front. It's anywhere from like $25 to $120, depending on the time of the night in the club.
Right.
And then I go on stage on a rotation whenever they say so, type of thing. And I sell my private dances in between to recoup.
Right.
And it's funny because I've been backstage at a few dance clubs and strip clubs because if they do comedy, that becomes our green room.
Right.
And sometimes there's like things on the wall where kind of, you know, the rules, but also it's like if you take if you come in an hour early, you'll save $20 off the fee and all that, or if you come in on a Monday or something. So they've got all these little kind of
Ontario was like, if you sneeze, there's a fine. If you do schoolwork, there's a fine. You know, if you use your phone, there's a fine.
Wow. They don't want you to get ahead.
No, I'm not even shitting you about the schoolwork thing as well.
Wow.
Now,
I did a show at a strip club in Prince George, and they didn't advertise that it was a comedy show. It was with another female comic named Christina Walkinshaw. So men kept on showing up, and they're like, who are these girls on stage talking? Like, they didn't get it at all.
Do you think they were respectful enough to use the word girls?
No, they were probably like bitches. Yeah. I don't know.
Who are these dumb bitches talking about?
But the manager of that club, because I talked about how I always wanted somebody to make it rain on me, he did. He made it rain on me with fives, and I'm like, I feel so honored. Like, this is a big moment for me. How many times have people made it rain on you?
Hopefully without loonies or toonies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these days, the clouds are fairly dry.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot of rain in Niagara Falls at the Sundowner, you know, and I want to say like golden era. So 2002 at the very latest, and even by then it was like ending, right? Well, my last memory is the Buffalo Bills playing home games. So whatever year that was, that'll pinpoint it. I could easily make 3,000 on one stage show.
Oh,
wow.
A night?
Yeah, and I'm like 19 back then. I totally had it.
Can I ask too? Because I've seen this before at like I haven't seen it in like probably like 10 or 15 years, but I remember sometimes I would see some clubs in Toronto promote an amateur night where if you've never danced up on stage and you just wanted to, how do those work? Or
so amateur nights are really popular with customers. So most clubs definitely exploited the shit out of them when they were able to get away with it.
Right.
But ever since Me Too, things have changed dramatically, and the clubs have had to be very conscious of what people will lash out at them about. And you know, enticing young girls is like a not so much anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a show in Vancouver called Rent Check, and it's at this like dive bar, and anybody can enter, men, women, anybody, doesn't matter what you look like. And then they have a strip off, and then whoever wins will win their rent for the month. And it's a really fun and popular show. And like,
I would love to attend that. I keep telling the clubs, well, why don't we just reverse it and do like a cougar night? But nobody's put it together yet.
Yeah.
Well, I can say one thing though. I'm always like, it's just that the attitude is so different from. And it's an old cliche of what it's the atmosphere at a men's strip club versus a female strip club is. And I remember at this place, the House of Lancaster on the Queensway, I was probably coming home from a shitty, horrible gig. It was totally the audience's fault. Let me just say that first.
Of course.
Had nothing to do with me and how I couldn't relate to. Anyway, so I'm driving and I parked.
That's their fault.
Oh, it's exactly. And so I remember going in, paying like $2 to go into the men's side, but then just this absolutely, it just sounded like a rock concert was going on on the women's side in the Fox's Den, but just on the other side, it just sounded like it was all just like grinding teeth and erections, but.
It was really fun back when they had that happening at a lot of clubs. Like my very first club ever was at the Royal Hotel in Whitby, Ontario. Yeah. Okay. And they had like the half and half club. So did the Manor in Guelph, Ontario. Yeah. So the girls and the guys would like travel together back then. And there was a lot of like camaraderie. It was really cool. And I'm sure you guys get to experience that. Nowadays, it's not like that anymore at all. There's been a lot of changes.
Well, I know in Niagara Falls they had Mints, right? Which was they had the same scenario.
So weird. They slow danced on a black and white checkered dance floor. Like
it was always like one side's men, one side's women. Then at one point they all kind of get together after being all horned up, and then they slow dance. It was just weird. I mean, I always thought, hey, why not? You know, you get your into this and you're into that, and we want to hook up, we hook up. But it was a very weird scenario.
I can remember one time I used to live right by a strip club, the Club Paradise in Toronto, which I always liked because there was the stage.
The submarine.
Right, and the girls would come up from this sort of like a trap door. This would be like, it was like a factory. It was like, it was like the holodeck. They were just coming up from the ground.
Like when I was a teenager, girls were like, you had to get there one day, right? Everybody had to experience the submarine elevator.
Right. I remember that place, and the only time I've ever actually seen a bar fight happen too was at that place. And
I didn't work there much. It was a rough environment for me, for sure.
Right.
Darren said that you're on OnlyFans, and I don't mean to brag, but this week I hit $2,000 on my OnlyFans finally. I just have a very
amazing.
I don't have many followers, but my subscription is way up there because I don't need to show off to everybody, but if somebody's desperate enough to see my tits, they can for $50 a month. But
that's how I'm doing mine. That's how I'm doing mine, and I'm just not comfortable going less than that. Like I started with Patreon before they had their censorship movement, and I was doing 100 then, and that was like just how I got comfortable. And I did that for a year, and then the censorship ruined it, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do 49 and only get 39. I was pissed, so people really critique me about it. It's like, well, what about all the other girls? And I'm like, well, we can have that talk at the club too, and I don't care.
Right. People are like, that's a high subscription, and I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I don't care if you want to pay for it or not.
Well, I'm sure you guys, as comedians as well, it's the same thing, right? Like, I mean, you're just gonna see your value where you see it, and that's the end of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, every person has to have a different value attached to it, and how you get there is your own personal reason.
Exactly.
I won't go for a certain amount, and if that means I don't work again, I don't work again. And so the whole thing with the OnlyFans, and we've talked about it before on the show, I only think it's great, mainly because it's going directly to the person. There's less middlemen. Yeah, they take a fee. I get that. But if somebody wants it and you want to provide it, you're getting the money. There's no pimp attached to it. There's nothing else.
Has it changed a lot of the game for your industry?
Well,
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm surprised I haven't heard any feedback from club owners or managers, because I have some pretty long-term, friendly contacts. Maybe it's mainly ego. Nobody's ever going to admit vulnerability in this industry. But it's shocking to me that none of them have said, like, oh, shit, the girls figured out how to not need us. We should probably start acting nicer to them.
Right.
I anticipated that to happen, but I haven't heard that call yet.
Well, it's always scary when artists figure out how to skip the middleman, because it's always the people with like no artistic talent that make the money. So it's always nice to see when the people with actual artistic talent make the money.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
I know there's been a huge boom in OnlyFans since the pandemic started, because when women can't go out and perform live, and then that's the source of their main income, but then they also develop, they can also develop a fan base by like regular guys going back to the club to see them over and over again. And so if they still want to be connected to those customers that they had, they'll start up an OnlyFans site. And apparently there's been a huge boom of that during the pandemic. So it's like they can still keep in touch with the people that, and it'd be weird that clubs don't try to cross promote more.
Utilize it. Yeah. I mean, I keep telling them, like, why don't we have like a selfie station set up with the club's name in the background? Like, come on, guys, 2020, right? Yeah. And I mean, I work somewhere in St. John's where majority of the customers, not
Ooh, I like her spider hand.
Very long time.
Oh, no, something's going on there. We can't hear you.
She's got a McGee problem.
Well, hold on a second.
I'll be back.
Hi, this is Gavin Stevens. You're listening to Anything Goes with Darren Frost, Kathleen McGee, and Dave Martin, who's holding the microphone on XFM radio. So, this is the show. What's happening here?
What's going on?
That's
no, you just got out of it. It's fine. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah. But Dave, go ahead. You had a question that you wanted to ask her.
Oh, I sound like I'm a Jerry Springer audience member now when I say, it's not a question, more like a comment. But no, I remember when I said I was coming back from, I used to live right near Club Paradise. I was coming back there from a horrible show. And I remember I walked up to the bar, and a girl that I'd seen there, her name was Storm. So, which I thought was always a great name.
She's an Avenger. She's an Avenger. It's nice.
Well, yeah, she didn't. I don't think she knew the comic book, but she was a very shapely white girl, not a black girl with a mohawk. But
okay.
So, anyways, her name was Storm, and then I remember walking up, and she was sitting at the bar, and I remember just saying, "Oh man, I just came from a horrible show." And then she turned to me and she just said, "Oh, I know what you mean. This crowd is totally dead." And when a comic hears that, it's sort of like, I mean, I know the rules of you can't touch the girls, but I wanted to hug her so much because it was like totally like, oh my God, you get it. You really get it.
Yeah.
And then I remember once I was at the House of Lancaster on Bloor Street, and there was a girl that came out just not getting any crowd reaction at all, and then just sort of very robotically sort of danced. And then she did her song, she went away. And then the next girl came out, and she danced to the song from Grease, You're the One That I Want.
Mm-hmm.
And
really? Wow.
Yes, and she ripped up the room, and in that song, in the time that song was playing, that crowd went from a bunch of zombies to like fucking zombies that just discovered crystal meth. They were just like fucking going apeshit.
I love how you just described that. Oh my God.
It was just sort of like, they went just nuts. And I'm sitting at the bar going like, wow, that's how you turn a crowd around. Because comics always talk about that. Of like, if somebody bombs, you go on next, or the host comes on, and if he can turn the crowd around and bring you up, but it's just, how have you found, what if you are in front of a dead crowd, what does that turn in? Like, are there ways that you can turn them around?
Yeah, totally. I connect so much with how you just described that. And in 22 years of stripping, I have never heard a stripper account anything close to what you just said. Mm-hmm. So it's like totally doing something for my soul hearing you describe that. I take it upon myself, like almost every stage show, to be that girl, because very few will even think about it like that. Mm-hmm. And I do kind of think it's our responsibility. I get mad at dancers when they bitch about the crowd, even though I have my moments right here too. There's really too many give a fuckless girls going on, right? So when I pick my music in particularly, I like to challenge myself because I'll get bored if I don't, because I've been doing it so long, right? And I try to pick music that isn't something a stripper would dance to. So I love that she played that. I really want people to stop talking, turn their head and go, huh?
Yeah, right.
Well, it's one of those guilty pleasure songs where like everybody knows that song, but nobody would ever be like, hey, can you put that song on? But when you hear that song, you're like, all right, okay. That's why it's always funny to me when you see the girls sort of pick the music for themselves and not the audience. Yeah, I think you have to sort of balance it out a little bit. But
well, I think that stripping and stand-up comedy are so similar in how we tour, in how we get hired, and in how we are treated. Honestly, like I've talked to lots of strippers, and I'm like, I feel like we're in the same industry. I think you guys get a little bit more money and more free drugs, but we don't get as much. But
yes.
And we're only figuratively naked up on stage. We're not literally naked.
Yes.
I always like it when comics go, it's like we're naked up there. I don't know about that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really. But.
Yeah, that workshop that you did, Darren, really put that into perspective for me, because I was allured to the comedy workshop out of the curiosity for the connection, and then after hearing you describe everything, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of parallels. There's I mean, every time I've met a dancer and they find out I'm a comic, I don't know, maybe it's just me or whatever, but the facade kind of falls away and they start talking on a real level sometimes about their business and how the night's going, and I get it. I mean, even Saturday night I had to do a show. You didn't really want to, but the pandemic, sometimes you got to do things you don't want to, and you're there and do the show, and so you do. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities. The one thing I did want to ask you, and I didn't want to forget, is the one thing I'm interested in is, me and Kathleen were talking about this right before you came on, that you believe in a polyamorous lifestyle, or at least I've seen you post about that. And we were talking, me and Kathleen, and I didn't know what the difference is between a poly lifestyle and swinging. So if you could explain the differences, because I think a lot of people won't know what that is.
Totally. That's a great question. I was just going to dive in quick and say, I'm assuming comedians, you guys all experience kind of the same hardships when it comes to being in relationships, going to perform, not having a great night, coming home, having that partner expecting you to be in perfect spirits and having to always be on. I find that really draining. So that had a little bit to do with when I started exploring how relationships could be different for me, because my lifestyle just didn't make sense for traditional relationship, right? And so I always thought polygamy, that was the only word I was familiar with. I always thought that was swinging, and swinging wasn't something that ever appealed to me. But when I was a young girl, like early into relationships, I wanted to be with men and women because I've always felt very balanced, equal, 50-50 bisexual. And I didn't want to just be having these wild threesome evenings, but I didn't have the context to have the courage to ask for anything beyond that, right? So one day I made a joke about, I had seen like one of the reality TV shows, and my ex-wife was like, what life would you want to have if you could have any life? So I said something kind of close to her, and she goes, no, seriously, like, what would you want? And I had never been asked that. It was a really moving question. I was like, I think I should go to Utah and be a polygamist. Seems like that would work for me. And she was like, I think you should probably research polyamory. And I did, and it was poof, my whole life changed. I went out and got myself branded because, as you guys know, boys don't really listen sometimes in the early stages. And I've been refusing monogamous relationships ever since. And I think that really ignited the woman I've become over the last 4 or 5 years, because I've put down a lot of healthy boundaries for relationships that would make my work and lifestyle a much bigger drag than it now feels like it is.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, because, like, you say, like...
Frozen again.
Oh, no, am I frozen now?
No, you're not frozen.
Okay. But, like, I think within the... We can see you and hear you, I think. It's working.
Yeah, it's okay,
I think it's like easy, like when you're not easy, but I think it's like when you're in your industry, because people are more sex positive and more willing to talk about it. And it's hard to talk about sex with people, even though everyone loves it. You know, it's hard to talk about it with everybody around you. And monogamy has become this thing that's just like, that's what everybody does. But I think I know couples that are open, and I know all this stuff, and they're happiest people. They're the happiest of all of them.
I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people have a problem because they think, "Why am I not enough for you?" And I don't think that's what it's about when you want to be poly. It's not about. It's not enough. I mean, I personally believe that if you can live with someone and then go fuck other people, but not live with them, you like living with this one person, that's a different thing. I view them as two separate things. One's physical, one's mental. And so I understand why. I mean, I'm not poly myself. I'm not saying me and my wife swing. We don't. But I understand it. And I kind of get behind it because I don't think I should ever judge someone for what they do. We're all taught not to judge people that are gay, people, especially now, trans, and being accepting. Well, how can you only be so accepting of that and not of all these other lifestyles? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think that people need to start understanding that there's not just monogamy. And if that's good for you, that's great.
Yeah.
It works for me, but it's not going to work for everyone.
I always said that monogamy is like having twins. Like, not everybody is going to have it, but some people have it and they're happy. But it's not for everybody, and you shouldn't force yourself into that because you'll be miserable.
Yeah.
Right. I do, but I don't
honest,
Pardon?
Go ahead.
What did you say?
I just think it's the biggest flattery as well to like have a partner, you know, decide that they're okay with you exploring other partners.
Right.
And then after a number of years, when you've now shown that partner that you still treat them in that same context and that like you didn't need somebody else and all these misconceptions, that is like to me the hugest form of flattery in the world.
Right.
So
well, it's a lot about security, right? It's about security though. If my wife goes and fucks someone else, is she going to come back and be okay with me after that? And that's, I think, also something that's a boundary for people because they feel, what if she likes that more? And she doesn't want to be with me anymore. That's a security issue. And so, you know, some relationships...
So for me, I really get off on it.
Yeah.
I really get off on the risk because it's like, if they don't leave me for something better, like, wow, this is really what I thought it was. So I kind of like testing those parameters because of that. For me, that's my biggest driver for it.
I think communication is key, because I think I can see a lot of men and women on both sides saying being like, they will just say yes to it because they don't want to lose the other one.
Right.
So if I was like head over heels for a woman, I wouldn't, but I could see a guy being like, okay, I'm cool with it, because he's afraid that he'll lose her. Right. And then she'll go off and do it, and he'll never really be that comfortable with it, but he doesn't want to lose her. But I think it also needs to, you also have to have that understanding that the guy's allowed to go off too. But if the guy doesn't necessarily want to do that, I just think sometimes I can see one partner taking advantage of it over the other one, because if the other one doesn't necessarily want to go and be with anyone else. But that's all stuff that you'd have to work out. Pardon me?
It's frightening for me, absolutely. And for me these days, it's frightening to like even dabble in like a dinner date if it's somebody who doesn't already have a polyamorous lifestyle and experience with. Because everything else is just a total brain drain, like derailing, distracting nuisance that I don't need in my life,
Right.
Now, have you ever dated someone that, what Dave just said, they said they were cool with it, or even was cool with your job, and then, 6 months, a year later, they're not so cool with it?
This is the biggest joke of my life, but, it's not really a joke, but I mean, I turn it into one just because it's so repetitive and, silly. Nobody plans to fall in love with a stripper.
Right.
Nobody goes to a strip club and goes, I'm going to go fall in love with a stripper.
Right.
Well, they go, I could never fall in love with a stripper.
Well, no, I think a lot of guys get infatuated with strippers, and we had a guest on last week and we sort of talked about this as well. It's sort of like how the guy can start of getting his back up a little bit when he sees her come home with like $1,300 or like, $800 or whatever. And he's sort of like, whoa, hey, where did you get that? Or why did you get that much money? And then he has to remind himself, well, that's what lured him in the first place. And then of course she's going to use those skills when she goes off to work. But then I can always see, there's a documentary about Stacey Valentine, who was a porn star. And then she started dating another porn star. And then you could tell at a certain point in the documentary, the guy was clearly not cool with her still being in the business. And it's just, I guess you never really know until you're in it.
Yeah, I always tell less experienced dancers, like, you have to stop getting mad at this guy that you're dating. How dare he now decide he wants you to be different? He met you at the club, he should know. That's like the general attitude in the change room, right? I'm like, guys, this is your 10th time doing this. This is probably his first stripper catch a feeling. Oops. So take some responsibility and lay some parameter ground rules and stop letting them take over your life and then freaking out and getting mad at them. Because I just watched the cycle, right? And it's like, I think the guys are really naive kind of victims to the oops love, to be honest with you.
Well, guys are very naive. You're very right.
But I mean, guys get, people get captivated very much too. It's like women and rock stars, you see someone up on stage and everyone's going crazy for them. And there's that, ooh, wow, you become bigger than life when you're up on stage. And
well, it's the same thing as being a female comedian, is because like, I'll always date guys. I'm like, it's so cool what you do. It's so cool what you do. And then I'm gone for a month to tour. I'm doing this and that. And and then suddenly, all you do is party on the weekend. And that's all you ever do. And I'm like, well, you knew all of this coming in. I was very upfront about what I did. And yeah. So
for me, I'm glad I got married when I did, much later than probably the average person. Like, I didn't meet my wife until I was 30, and then, we didn't get married till like 32. But in my 20s, I don't think I would. I would suffer exactly like you did. I'd be like gone, and I'm like, well, I want to do this. This is more important for me then than obviously now, and that's why I don't go on the road as much now. But yeah, that's got to be hard, even in dancing, or stripping. In your 20s, that's the time where you want to go and do everything you possibly can.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. I kept committing to monogamy.
Yeah. And it sounds cool. It's like, ooh, my girlfriend's a stripper. Ooh, my girlfriend's a stand-up comedian. But then, like, the real parts of the whole job start coming out, and it's not, a lot of people can't handle it. I got dumped once by a guy who was upset that his friends thought I was funnier than him, and he was the funny guy in the group. Like,
Kathleen, you can just say me. You can just say me, okay?
No, I dumped you.
Okay.
I dumped you. This guy dumped me. But he said, I can't. You're funny. My friends think you're funnier, and I can't do that. I'm like, it's so ridiculous.
But aren't you glad you know that, and it didn't go that much farther?
Oh, absolutely.
Fuck that guy.
But I've like literally my whole life has been like, I'm just engaged now. Like, and I'm 39. I'm gonna get married when I'm 40. But it's like, comedy has destroyed almost all of my romantic relationships. But I don't mind because I like comedy more than those relationships.
Right.
But yeah, when you can't go to a dinner party because you have 2 shows in Mississauga that night, and you have to say to someone, "Listen, I can come by after the shows and I'll give you a ride home, but I wish I could be there, but I can't. This is what I do." You know, it's sort of like when someone asks me, "What am I doing for the weekend?" and I'll be like, "You mean Monday and Tuesday?"
Yeah.
I'm working Wednesday through Saturday, possibly Sunday if there's a second show with like a show added.
So that's why it's better to date people that kind of get it. Like my fiance is a chef, and he gets that in. Like he's in this industry, he gets like the no weekends thing. He gets that. Like it's never
right.
Yeah.
For just so you know, Chelsea, Dave and Kathleen have a history. They used to date. They don't date anymore, and I think they both learned to maybe don't date in the business. But for you, have you ever dated in your business? Like you were like, oh, the same hours, whether it was a girl or a guy. Did you ever date? And then it's like it didn't work, and then you've got to go to work and you've got to see that person or a staff member you dated, and like the door guy or the DJ or any of that.
Okay, well, it's funny because in my early years, first 10 years, I did and said a lot of the things the other girls didn't say, right? So I didn't have the best moment to say about things. So back then I had a, oh my God, don't fuck the DJ thing going on, which is really funny because nowadays, like the DJ is my God and I connect with them so deeply on a deeper and emotional level. But I haven't actually gotten involved with any of them ever over the years. I think because I spent so many years conditioning myself about that.
Right.
But I also have no fucks given. Like, and I have had a really good ability to just live that way all my life. So any of the people who I did get involved with, like it was just like the next day it was just like, hey, I never really like let it mess with me, but I definitely got involved with dancers a lot over the years out of sheer desperation to just have somebody who understood me because I was just exhausted by trying to convince somebody that I was being honest about everything I was telling them. Because I'm a very honest girl, and you know, guys can't even take a compliment about their fucking shoe or their watch, let alone what I am and I'm not doing. Right. So it's hard. It's exhausting.
Can I ask, what will, if we become a subscriber to your OnlyFans, what will we see there?
You'll see a pretty good combination of things because I've been working on kind of not doing one style of anything, right? But the main driver for me that really ignited my soul about just really wanting to do it, contrary to making money with it, right, was exploring my food fetish. So I decided I was going to do a lot of food play because I am a chef by trade and I'm a holistic maniac. So I'm like, well, I've always had the unsupportive boyfriends over the years giving me the funny eye when I even slightly suggested food play. So now I'm going to get really hardcore about my food fetish because no one can stop me. This is hilarious. So that's kind of been like my front and center motivator. But I also just do simple posts. I do change room club stuff. I do outdoor shoots and videos. I've been learning a lot about how to produce like 10-minute videos with music and stuff like that and staying away from the copyright nonsense. It's been a lot of work. I've been working really hard on learning how to do some pretty decent amateur production.
Okay.
I started my OnlyFans as a joke, and it was going to be that I was just going to put phallic food in my mouth. Like... And I have like,
it's already available on her Facebook, so
yeah. But my first picture was a turkey brining. It was a joke. Like I wasn't even gonna start posting.
Awesome. The one thing I haven't done yet that I'm so disappointed I haven't prioritized yet is my gluten-free gravy shoot. I love gravy, and I want to be sloppy with gravy like super bad.
Is the gluten-free part really a thing that I don't think that affects you online?
It's very important.
Okay. All right.
That's awesome.
All right, so if people want to get to you on your OnlyFans, how do they do that?
So you type in onlyfans.com / holistic stripper chef.
Okay.
That's amazing.
I was told that was too long to brand, and I decided he was wrong.
Okay,
All
and then
right.
can people follow you on Twitter as well as a gateway into the OnlyFans, or what's the way?
They can, but I have to be honest with you. I'm not a very good tweety beady girl. Like I made an account and I just can't get down on the Twitter. I'm really present on Facebook, like you've noticed.
Right.
And I did an Instagram as well. I'm a lot more active on my Flavor Junction, which is a culinary business, on Instagram, and that's spelled O-U-R. If there's anybody in America listening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I need to get with the Twitter program. I'm not really a big, huge, crazy promoter that way. I'd rather just do my wild self on Facebook and be like, and by the way.
Yeah, I know. The similarities between you and comedians is growing higher and higher.
Yeah.
I'm bad at promoting. I'm not a comedian. Just let the work speak for itself, you know?
Yeah. Okay, well,
like you said, I have a wonderful opportunity in this club.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. Well, we'll put all that up, and thank you for being a part of the show today.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. We're just saying we're up. We're out of time. It's already 10 o'clock. But thank you. We'll put all the information up.
I want to throw in my trucker part quick. I want to throw in my trucker part quick. Let me.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So you said that.
So I'm in commercial truck driving school right now, and I cannot wait to be a trucker and a stripper and a chauffeur on OnlyFans. I think it's going to be fucking explosive.
So, okay, explain to me. So, is this only because of the pandemic you signed up for a trucking school, or were you always kind of thinking
behind why I was passionate? I was always very drawn to truckers, and I felt a synergy through my stripping. And my grandfather and have some really close long-term people in my life through the clubs from trucking. And then when COVID happened, it was like, I want to get into this club. This sounds like a lot of fun, you know? So I got school and I'm on my way now.
Well,
that's awesome.
That's amazing to hear. I mean, do you know we all know who Jeff Foxworthy is?
Of course, yep.
Yeah. Well, before there was like such a thing as the internet, a way to get your name out there and create a fan base, Jeff Foxworthy was the guy that he would record his shows and he would put them on cassettes, and they would be on sale at truck stops. So, and then these cassettes, and they would drive across country, and it was like sort of like the Grateful Dead, you know, that people would trade tapes back and forth, and they'd be like, "Here's Jeff." And so he built up this fan base of truckers before without radio, without TV exposure, without touring a lot, and so truckers got to know who he was, and that's always just an interesting story to me when people talk about truck stops and how you can go in them, and sometimes, and I remember ages ago you'd see comedy tapes there, and that was just a way that
and you could use that part of the branding on your OnlyFans if you could do shots in the trucks, you could do all kinds of things.
Yeah, maybe not audio tapes.
I've got some plans.
Yeah.
I've got some plans.
Yeah.
So fun.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that.
Hi, it's me, Tom Papa from the Marriage Ref. You're listening to Anything Goes on XM Radio. It's hilarious.
We had her. Now, before we were talking about something, and you had something, Kathleen, to say.
Oh, it was just that I fucked up with The Sixth Sense when I went to see it.
Yes.
We went to see it in theaters, and then we were leaving, and I was just like, that was the dumbest movie ever. And my friend was like, why? And I'm like, well, I just hated how at the end, his wife wouldn't even look at him. Like, he was just trying to talk to her and tell her he was sorry. And they were like, Kathleen, he was dead. And I was like, what? I didn't realize it. That he was dead. And, so I don't pay attention very much. But.
Yeah, it's sort of like discovering like music lyrics when someone tells you them for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't know how long I thought the song by Boney M was Rah Rah Rasputin, Russians made the slot machines. Which I don't know why I thought that made sense even when someone said it. And then I remember, of course, the old saying of you're singing along with it with a friend, and then your friend's like, What the fuck did you say?
I think that was very interesting how she's like going into trucking, because like it's the same sort of thing as like where you're in comedy and you're like, okay, I'm getting older and I don't want to be doing this forever, or
right.
You know, I'm like looking into going to barber school just to have something in my back pocket, you know.
Yeah,
and I think
why not?
Cool. Yeah, I think that's so cool that she's gonna be a little trucker. That's awesome.
My only thing is how much trucking is there on The Rock?
I don't know, but like she could do it elsewhere. Like she doesn't have to stay out.
No, yes, for sure. But that would be my next question in 6 months if she came back on. Is it just on The Rock, or did you have to move, or what are your plans? Maybe go down to the States to do it. Because that's really long haul trucking. It could be. You can get a job in it, but it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look fun. Although it would be fun to drive in one of those, or ride. I've always wanted to ride in one, but
I always thought about sleeping in the back. They have that back compartment.
Yeah.
I was interested in that. That's why I want to look more into something like that. I was interested in how much we found out that strippers confided in Darren at strip clubs and had chit and chats with them. I know it's weird when people wake up and or open up to you, especially when Darren looks so much like the star of the Centipede 2, the Human Centipede Part 2.
Yeah. That's why they open up to me, Dave. Just don't sew me together.
Yeah, they see those they see those bolt cutters in your bag, and they don't think they don't make a connection.
No, but back in the day before my wife, I had my strip club phase where I went a lot, and I can tell you tons of stories of off the record ones involving certain guys we know and some crazy stuff that happened. But for whatever reason, because I never got that many dances, so I guess they just realized I wasn't going to pay them very much money. And they just...
It happens to me too, though. When I go to strip clubs with guys, is girls will always sit down and start talking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, you're not here to have me strip for you. You're just here to hang out. And I tell you stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. My one friend Tim always just says that he always just tells them that he's gay. And he's definitely not gay, but he always just says, "Oh, I'm gay," and then they just sit down and they just talk to him like a normal person because you know that he's not going to go off for a dance with them, and he's not going to. And the whole time he's just hiding a boner. But I also want to say last week I did sort of come across at the beginning of the show that I was a bit of a downer, and when I was talking about, but I do get out and I went to the axe throwing thing to get my social circle a little bit bigger, and I still am not convinced by hand jobs, and I still think there's no dignity in them. But unless you've lost both hands in a combine accident, and I always say in a joke that it's like getting a woman to cut your steak for you. But I mean, have I gone to Muse yet? No, but I think you should only go there when you need to, not when you want to, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
Go get a hand job.
Yeah, go get a hand job.
I can do that myself. Anyway.
Okay. So. All right.